With us now is Lee Lorenzen. Lee was with Xerox when the STAR system was developed there, and Lee is now a software engineer with Digital Research Incorporated. And next to Lee is Bennett Wiseman. Ben is the Associate Director of the Market Analysis Service at Infocorp.
Ben, it seems like the Macintosh was introduced, I guess, as a computer for the home, and then and now we're trying to break into the office with the Macintosh. What opposition is there going to be?
Well, the system has been built to be very easy to use and very easy to install, and there are some limitations that have been put on that to get those compromises. And the question is really whether the ease of use will get them into the office or whether the limitations will prevent their acceptance.
What kind of limitations? We're talking about limitations.
Things like speed of the network, interfaces to other products. All of these things have been discussed, and Apple's very aware that they need them, but the market still has to deliver on them. And I think for business users, particularly larger business users, to be comfortable with what's going on, they'll have to see a lot more hard product and be convinced that Apple's going to give them the kind of support and connection capability that they're going to demand. Now, that may not be the case for smaller businesses where the attractiveness of the package and things like the laser writer will make it very useful immediately for them, and they won't have concerns about how does this link to my IBM mainframe.
Ben, in your report to your clients on this, you made an interesting comment that for Apple to succeed here with the Mac Office, they have to kind of tone down their hype. What did you mean by that?
Well, business users as opposed to home users tend to be extremely conservative, and a lot of the things that are attractive about Macintosh work against the basic policies of a lot of office systems. They don't like openness and lack of control and the ease of proliferation of software and products, which is really the fundamental theology behind a product like Macintosh and the Macintosh Office. And if the advertising goes in such a way that makes business users feel uncomfortable, as opposed to IBM, who does everything possible to make them feel as supported and as loved as possible.
Right.
They'll run into difficulty. Advertising reflects that.
We're obviously trying to break into another direction with Jim, which is a product that Lee's going to talk about, is from the IBM PC side into taking that kind of a same interface and using that. Lee, can you talk about Jim at all?
Sure. I think the best way to talk about it is to actually get a demonstration of the product. As you can see, we're running here on an IBM PC AT. And I'll just pull up a calculator, which is an example of one of the desk accessories that we have. And as you can see, the color is really very vivid with Jim here. I'll go ahead and close that window out, and then we'll go into, this is the Jim desktop, which actually provides a visual look at the filing system, the underlying filing system of DOS, which is, it essentially replaces the A greater than, which is a difficult concept for users to use. And let me bring up one of the pictures that we have here with Jim Draw. We'll click on that, and Jim Draw is a graphical drawing package which can be used for drawing things like you're going to see here in a minute, such as a video camera, or also for doing business presentations, the kinds of foils with text that is the predominant part. As you can see here, we have a camera. We can come up here to the edit menu and duplicate that. Important thing here is that now we got two cameras, and we just have to move to this second one and drop it down like that, and it's as easy as that to use. The other important concept here is we can take that camera, and it's actually not just a single element as appears on the screen, but many elements, and we can ungroup those elements. You see all the various pieces that make up the camera.
So this is the difference between a paint and a draw program, basically, is that a paint program is just like a piece of paper. Once you've painted over or drawn over something, it's gone. And here the individual components and pieces are still available for moving or regrouping.
That's right, and we've actually selected one of those objects here, and then we can come over here and give it a color, like so. So we got a red body.
So you draw it in black and white, and then you can add the color.
Or you could have drawn it in color as you were going along, but you can add the color at really any point in the process.
Okay, Lee, it looks like a kind of color version of a Mac type interface. You're running this now on a PC AT. Is that the kind of machine you need to run Jim?
Well, Jim will run on machines like the PC. It even runs on the PC Junior. It requires 256K of memory and obviously some kind of graphic screen to run. However, when you actually get into versions that support the color, it does take a machine more the horsepower of an AT or a Tandy 2000, that type of machine, to really handle the color effectively.
Okay, Lee, thanks. With Mac now moving into the office arena and the business arena, some products have become very important. On the software side, one is Jazz. On the hardware side, as we've heard, the Apple Laser Writer. We have a report.
When the developers of Lotus 123 announced that they were working on a similar package for the Macintosh, Apple saw it as a major step forward for the Mac. The idea of a multifunctional software package designed for the graphics environment of their new computer seemed like the ideal project.
We've taken some of the ideas and some of the lessons we learned in developing 123 and Symphony, which exists for the IBM and other compatible computers, taken some of those lessons and redesigned a new concept for the Macintosh. Very important to note, though, that we didn't merely carry over the products 123 and Symphony in the Macintosh. We started from scratch. We started from the Macintosh using the unique design capabilities of that machine, especially the graphical user interface.
Like 123 and Symphony, Jazz permits the user to keep several files active simultaneously. Database, memo sheet, word processing, and communications work interactively and make extensive use of the Mac's icons and hidden menus. Apple's determination to make its new machine a success led to some unusual partnerships during the Mac's development. If most new machines on the market try to fit themselves to existing software or hope for third-party companies to jump in, Apple courted the major software producers ahead of time.
It was sometime around the months of July, if I recall correctly, that Apple first showed us the Macintosh, which they're subsequently going to announce and release in January of 1984. So we were able to see the Macintosh up front, and we made a decision to develop for it because it was so unique, it was so different from what we had seen from other manufacturers.
Apple's attempt to anticipate the Mac's early needs did not end with software. The company is taking aim at IBM's office market with a new laser printer. Apple is betting that the laser's high speed, about 8 pages a minute, combined with the Mac's lively graphics, will finally give the computer the image they want, as a serious business tool from a determined company.
Stuart, Jazz is being offered to us as a state-of-the-art product, and I think it'd be interesting to see, how we got to this point and where we're going to go to in the future.
Well, I think our next guest can help us do that. Larry Tesler has joined us now. Larry worked at Xerox PARC. Larry helped develop the Lisa, and he's now the manager of the Future Architecture Group for the Macintosh.
Larry, you and others at Xerox PARC in the early 70s had a vision about what we're going to see in the 80s, and you hit, looks to me, right on. What were the steps that led us to this kind of a user interface that we're dealing with right now?
Well, there was a lot that went into it. It really probably started back in the 60s with Doug Engelbart's NLS group at SRI in Menlo Park, where they envisioned the coming of office automation and developed a system where actually the first mouse was used. It was a mouse very much like this with 3 buttons. But they were way ahead of their time, 20 years ahead of their time. Anyway, at Xerox PARC, a few people from that group came and joined us. And the main motivation at PARC was an understanding that hardware costs were plummeting, and systems with high-resolution graphics, which were then would cost $100,000 for a reasonable computer-aided design system, would be coming down in price to the point where someone could have it in their living room or in their office. This was really incredible at the time. We could barely believe the numbers, but there they were.
The time was when, Larry?
This was 1970 is when PARC started. I became an employee in '73.
There are visions of things like the Dynabook, for example, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
That was almost a reality now.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So we could see very much this sort of thing. And so we had this vision of workstations that had high-resolution bitmap graphics and mice, and networks tying them together, and laser printers, and file servers, and just what you see beginning to happen. People thought it would be coming around 1980. About the point we are now. So we were a little optimistic, I think, by about 5 years.
Well, what is the relationship between the work that was done at Xerox and the work that took off, say, in Apple with the Lisa and the Macintosh? How did that work out?
Well, what happened was that our research group at PARC was developing a system called Smalltalk, which was actually intended for educational users. I also spent part of my time working with a group that was developing systems for business users, so I got involved in both projects. Around 1980, it became pretty clear that Xerox was going to focus their attention entirely on a certain segment of the marketplace with fairly high-end workstations like the Star. And my personal interest was in personal computing, and there were a few others at Xerox with a similar interest. So several of us all moved to Apple and brought with us this inspiration to pursue the Smalltalk work, which was well known in the academic community, but it wasn't really being taken advantage of by any manufacturers.
That's interesting now that Apple is trying to move into that office automation area. Ben, what do you think about the Xerox Star? Is that a viable
It's still
product
very
anymore?
much a live product. I know not people are aware of its history, but it has gone through 5 major software revisions. The pricing has changed quite a bit, and the performance is substantially improved and broadened from what it was before. But its emphasis has been as a business system.
So it's something we just don't really see in this market.
Right.
What about the future? Where is this thing going? What kind of things? You had a good vision, say 10 years ago. What's going to happen in the next 10 years as far as this?
Well, I think there'll be some improvements still in visual presentation and pointing devices, but I think the main change we'll be seeing is in the area of communications. The ability for information in corporate databases to be downloaded into personal computers and actually usefully processed. The ability for people to prepare routine work to have it done for them by their machine. To have what we call an agent in the machine, which represents you in transactions with other individuals.
Sounds like we're going in a lot of good directions.
Gentlemen, we're out of time. Thank you.
Okay.
The Apple Macintosh has received an unheard of kind of notoriety. Things like the famous 1984 commercial in the Super Bowl, the Lemmings commercial, which we just saw some time ago. Yet we heard on this program that the whole media hype may be a problem for Apple as it approaches this business market. Our commentator Paul Schindler has some thoughts on Apple's media image.
The two Macs in this world, the Apple Macintosh and the McDonald's Big Mac, have a lot in common. They're both over-advertised, shiny boxes whose contents disappoint. Now, look, I know the people that designed the Apple Macintosh say they meant it to be a business machine from the start. And I know they say there's now hundreds of business software packages available for the Macintosh. But that doesn't convince me. You can call a mouse an elephant for a week if you want. You can even take out full-page ads in the paper. In the end, both are going to be gray and both will have tails, but anyone who takes a close look is going to be able to tell the difference. Apple wants the Macintosh to be taken seriously in the office, and I'm sorry, but I just don't think that's ever going to happen. The machine is wonderful, but it's flawed. It's too expensive, it isn't fast enough, and it's in black and white. I just don't get it. Apple used the world's finest technology in the Mac and produced a machine with an entertaining disk drive sound that users spend too much time listening to. It's got a small screen, it's great for graphics, but it's overkill for words and data. I like Apple. I wish them good luck in breaking IBM's hegemony over the personal computer market. I just don't think Mac is the answer. That's my opinion. I'm Paul Schindler.